This episode of The Shift is sponsored by LinkedIn. As a B2B marketer, you know how noisy the ad space can be. Well, it's time you had a marketing platform built specifically for you. That's LinkedIn Ads, the platform where you can cut through the noise by precisely reaching the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant. Target your ideal audience by job title, industry, company, and more. Stand out with LinkedIn Ads and start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. LinkedIn Ads allow you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. You'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers, 1 billion members, and 10 million C-level executives. You'll be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools that are built specifically for B2B. In technology, LinkedIn generated 2 to 5 times higher return on ad spend than other social media platforms. And you'll work with a partner who respects the B2B world that you operate in. 79% of B2B content marketers said LinkedIn produces the best results for paid media. Throughout my career on magazines, digital media, and now podcasts, LinkedIn has been invaluable. It's given me direct access to people and ideas that have helped shape the Shift podcast and newsletter and seen it grow into the thriving hub for midlife women that it is today. Stand out with LinkedIn Ads and start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/theshift to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/theshift. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Life is full of things to manage. Your work, your family, your plans, and your treatment. Consider Kesimpta, ofatumumab 20 milligram injection. You can take it yourself from the comfort of home. If you're ready for something different, ask your healthcare provider about Kesimpta and check out the details at kesimpta.com. Brought to you by Novartis Pharmaceuticals Corporation.
Hello and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40. Created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster Sam Baker. Today's guest is the American actress, writer and singer Moon Unit Zappa. Moon shot to fame in her early teens when her vocals featured on her father Frank Zappa's unlikely hit, Valley Girl. Subsequently, she's been an actor, singer, presenter, artist and writer. We're around about the same age, and I know I've pretty much been aware of her ever since. But she was never quite able to step out of the shadow of her musical genius father, Frank. The eldest of 4 siblings, Moon says she was basically an adult by the time she was 5. Now aged 57, Moon has written Earth to Moon, a funny, self-deprecating and candid memoir that attempts to bring perspective to a life lived in the glare of celebrity, creativity, genius, and narcissism. It's just begging to be turned into a TV series. If, like me, you grew up with a reassuringly boring small-town childhood, you might look at Moon's life with a pang of envy. Well, Moon is here to set you right.
Even if you ask yourself what you want, there isn't the space yet in the culture that says, oh, let me help you with that. I'm wired to think, I'm going to help you make your dreams come true, and now we'll work on my dream.
Moon joined me from her home in LA to talk about the lifelong impact of growing up in a household that revolved around a musical genius, and with a mother who was the ultimate unreliable narrator. We also discussed eldest daughter syndrome, the Nepo baby dilemma, how she learnt to make herself central to her own life, the curse of dating both versions of your parents, eek, and why she thinks hot flashes are hilarious. I love your earrings.
Oh, thank you.
Where are they from? Are they like a handmade type?
Yeah, I got them in Taos, New Mexico, and I went to a piercing shop, and they had all manner of amazing carved things there.
Is that where you still live? Because you moved there, didn't you, for a while?
I don't live there now. It's such a magical place. Yeah, I recommend anyone go. It's there's something about places that have a dead volcano or an active volcano. There's something about that landscape. There just feels like there's something bubbling underneath. They say if you can hear the Taos hum, then it's a place for you.
Oh, wow. It's interesting you say that, because I live in Edinburgh and it's built on 2 volcano plugs.
I think that's why I love that spot so much. I really felt at home there. I really felt it. I felt something magical about that spot.
I wonder if that's why. When were you last here?
Oh, that must have been, I think when my first novel came out. I went for the book fair there.
I have got zillions of questions, and I had, in fact, you can't see because I've turned them all back now, but I had turned down so many corners in the book, which I adored. It was so funny and not funny in many places. And I actually was just going back through my notes before I checked on, and I had written "fucking hell" so many times.
Well, I'm just thrilled that you responded to the humor, because I think in some of the interviews I've done, that's getting lost. I think just basically because the shock of what I experienced.
Yeah, I mean it's extreme, but it's not bleak at all.
Thank you.
Well, some of the later stuff with your mum is like not great, but no, I thought the overriding sense of it was that it was funny. And
oh, great, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, definitely. Well, I hope it does well. Can I ask you? This is going to sound like a really stupid question to begin with, but are you sat in your kitchen right now?
No, I'm in my art space. This is the room where all the creativity happens. So it's a table of art supplies. I have OCD, so every single thing is labeled in a container. I like to have adult and kid-friendly gatherings where people just make art together and have a laugh.
Oh, how nice. And you're back in California?
I'm in California at the moment, yeah.
What was it, do you think, about being in your 50s that enabled you to write Earth to Moon? Why now?
Well, I always thought it was Gail's story to tell, because she was the quote, quote, adult in the house. And she was there.
Sorry to laugh.
I know, it's pretty funny after you read the story. But I think she was with Frank, and that was their journey. And as the daughter of somebody who is such a prolific cheater and such an incredible genius, who I just worshipped him. He was really my first love, not in an ancestral way, but he just broke the mold. He set the bar so high in terms of humor, intelligence. He was so playful, so improvisational, and I decided to write the book because when Gail basically destroyed, in my opinion, the family, dividing the intellectual property and handing it over to my 2 younger siblings that I helped raise when she passed, I was so thrown by this curveball that I had to write this book to just make sense of what happened. I didn't have access to all of her papers and all of her belongings and to her computer. And I felt like I just didn't know who she was in the end. The idea that she didn't wish me well eternally. When your mother's your first bully, I had to just start from scratch, redefine what is family, what is love, what is connection, what is trust, loyalty. On and on.
And that's a big ask, isn't it? When you've been brought up in a family where, I can't remember the exact wordings, but I think that there's a moment where you say that Gail has basically said, we have to be discreet. We can only trust us. We can only trust the family. And yet within the family, you feel like a loose cog almost.
Yeah. I don't know what your experience was like growing up, but I just felt like I was an outsider in a patriarchy, in a larger culture of a patriarchy. And very early on, I was really aware this unequal, unacceptable formula that I was not interested in, and I didn't understand, and I still don't. I cannot believe that things are the way they are for women, and that children truly are not looked after, and it's sad.
I mean, anybody growing up in the 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s, grew up in a house where the men were centered. But you really did grow up, didn't you, in a house where Frank, you had the combination, I guess, of growing up in patriarchy, but growing up in a house of a genius, a male genius. So where Frank was centered above all else.
My friend calls it calls it Pharaoh syndrome.
Yes, I love that.
It really was the visuals. All the arrows pointed to the top of the pyramid, and there wasn't, as far as I could tell, any signs of that arrow then traveling back down and then circling back up, and all of us having a turn at the top. It just, we all sacrificed so much, and gladly. Because he was amazing. But I think when Gail died, or after my father died, rather, we all felt, this is again my experience, I believe we all felt that we had lost so much, and the fact that we didn't have clear communication, or the family check-in on the weekends, and just summarizing, how was that for you? What's your grief like? What do you need? It just, and I think movies and books and music raised me, saved my life. Those were the ways that I made sense of the world, because that was not happening inside the home. So, and then I spent, as I described in the book, quite a lot of therapy, asking all the right questions of maybe not all the right people. And,
yes, yeah.
And that was a disappointment.
But how do you even know who the right person is? That's the trouble, isn't it?
Don't you find that the funny thing is that when you fail or you have support, both of those extremes are still keeping you somehow on that middle path that is yours. I think about how they describe how pilots, the plane is never flying in a straight line. It's always adjusting a little to the left or to the right. In my case, a lot to the left and a lot to the right.
Can you tell us just a little bit more about your childhood, about kind of what it was like growing up for you in that house?
Well, again, there was so much. My parents didn't have friends. They had people that were employees or that just gravitated around them. They were central to so many other people. And so I didn't just feel I was competing for my father's attention within my family. I was competing with the world for his time. And I get it. Blowjobs and applause are a lot more fun than making a school lunch, but it's still, we still had needs.
It's kind of your job if you're a parent or you're a mother. That's the trouble.
I know they put it on the mother. Yeah, and also there was a lot of occult phenomena around with that Gail was interested in, and so I don't think my brothers were exposed to as much of that as the girls were. But that was really one of her ways of navigating her own despair. Again, my opinion. And so you shouldn't know who Aleister Crowley is when you're 5. I don't feel.
No. And that was Gail.
That was Gail. And when I got older, and even in writing the book, I thought, oh my God, how much of this did Frank actually know? Because her mantra was, I'm doing everything for the kids. And so I think he just probably believed that was true. And instead of going to a friend for advice, she was going to psychics and dragging us along. And being told from the time you're very little that you chose your parent before you were born. This is a ludicrous concept for an adult to wrap their mind around. But as a kid, you believe every word your parents say. So the responsibility put on me to say, oh, I chose her screaming at me when she's sad about a groupie, ? It's just, how does this formula work?
Yeah, it puts all the responsibility onto the child, doesn't it? I mean, do you you were taking responsibility, adult responsibility, really, from such a young age, like 4 or 5. I mean, your next brother, Dweezil, is what, 2 years younger?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Amit's 7 years younger and Diva's 12 years younger.
Can you remember how that came about? Was that something that was expected of you, or was it something you kind of intuitively took on? Because you were kind of quite a hyper alert kid, weren't you?
Yeah, hypervigilance was definitely my thing. I just never felt safe. And so, I mean, I think it was baked into my namesake, Moon Unit. Unit because we became a family unit. I was the firstborn. And astrologically speaking, I have a Cancer moon. And a Libra is a sun sign. So there's the balance and the family comes first. And that was just hardwired. And then Moon, I'm just circling the sun, which is my father.
And you did take that literally, didn't you?
I am very literal. I'm probably neurodivergent in a way that's hard for me and others.
I mean, are you neurodivergent?
I'm starting to wonder if I am, because I do feel so different to other people. I think I really am a different thinker. And I just thought, I've got my dad's weird brain. But then I thought, maybe he was neurodivergent. He was really hyper-focused on the things he was hyper-focused on. Selfishness or just how he was made. These are the questions I'll never have answered.
That's such an interesting thought, isn't it? Because, you kind of describe him going down into his studio and not coming up, and everybody having to eat something that he could easily eat and not interrupt his work. And that, on the one hand, does feel like part of the kind of whole Pharaoh system. Everything fits around Frank. But on the other hand, it's very consistent with an autistic
Asperger's. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There was certainly no diagnosis, but upon reflection, some of these things may be hiding in plain sight. I think and maybe it's just my desire to forgive him, because he never raised his voice. He never did. He was like Spock and Jesus, and ministering to his flock with sermonizing with his guitar. And then he just had that, you could say, incapable of empathy in a way. And yet he had a softness in his eyes. He was extremely civic-minded. He did always come home to us eventually. So there was, and there was that Sicilian thing in there as well. Gail was certainly barefoot and pregnant a lot. And I don't know, it does make me wonder all these years later when we have more language for this stuff.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like the kind of neurodiversity, generational trauma, PTSD, all of those things that only really have become talked about quite a lot in the last 10 years, let alone, I mean, he died in the early 90s, didn't he? So how old were you then? 25?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I was just watching Kunk on Earth. Do you like that show?
Oh, yes.
It's hilarious, but it's I don't know. There's something so Kunk on Earth about how we were raised. We were really, truly feral and just making sense of the world through some of the good information we were being given and some of the information that we just had to interpret for ourselves. And in some ways we were, in again, my experience, I feel like we were stunted in a lot of ways. And of course, in all the ways your own parents are stunted, that's what gets passed on. And if you traverse beyond where they're stunted, then you're a path cutter all of a sudden. In the same way that my father never wanted to have anything standing in the way between him and his creativity. He never did drugs. He was drank, occasionally, but he always needed to have that pristine focus and nothing in the way of him and his creativity. And in that same way, I think I became fixated on human behavior. And the thing about traumatizing households is if you're spending that much time in survival, you're not growing imagination or going beyond just your weird hobbled together coping skills. And so it takes some time to undo that wiring and make yourself central to your own life, especially as a daughter in the culture and in the home.
Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/achieve today.
This is the kind of question that you could take weeks to answer. But I mean, anybody who is an eldest daughter is shaped by that. I mean, your case is extreme, but how much do you think that Moon as an adult was shaped by that formative experience of being the eldest daughter?
Well, it was difficult. I mean, when I would make attempts at my own creativity, I remember I did an art show. I pursued so many things because it wasn't mirrored back to me what I was, what I did, what I was good at. There was no room for that sort of thing, and so I pursued art making for a while, and I got a show together with an amazing painter named Alison Van Pelt. And we were going to show at a well-known gallery that was a Muckety Muck gallery in Los Angeles at the time. And moments before the show was going to happen, the gallery owner said, "Thanks to your last name, people will see the genius of Alison's work." And I had no idea. I was just being brought in so that somebody else could be showcased. And that's how it felt in my home. So to have an experience of that externally in the world, I just thought, what am I here for? What am I? And so it warped my view of myself. And the message was be nothing. And so I thought, I'll try being nothing, completely being nothing. And so I ended up in some tricky spiritual situations. And but there still was some good advice in those weird settings. I remember a spiritual teacher, Swami Satchitananda. He showed me a glass of water and a piece of paper behind it, and he showed me how it was warped through the lens of the water. And he said, basically, life can be like a funhouse mirror, and don't believe the image you're seeing reflected back. But it's difficult when those images are first generated in your home and they're not accurate in the home.
Yeah, so you've been seeing those images since you were teeny tiny.
And the world has been saying, that's great. More of that, please.
Yeah.
So that's doubly confusing.
Yeah. How old were you when that incident happened with the gallery?
I was
roughly
probably 22, 23.
Yeah, so you'd been doing stuff a while at that point.
Yeah, and when Frank saw my art, his first comment was "nice tits." I was making these dolls, and so he had this very juvenile sexual gaze that just it definitely made me feel dismissed, and yet that was the best he could do, and I had to push the decoder ring on my wrist and just be like, what he means is, I hope. Question mark.
There are several times through the book where you effectively sideline yourself, I think is what I'm trying to say. It's almost like you've picked up that message as a child and run with it. I mean, like the really striking example was when you were cast as Macbeth, a boy, but hey, we'll take what we can get. And you end up saying you don't want to be Macbeth, you'll be a witch, because Gail says, oh, that's too hard for you. You won't be able to cope with that. But also, like, you're not allowed to take center stage.
You're actually bringing tears to my eyes. That is such a... No, it's wonderful. It's such a defining moment where you're absolutely right. I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to. Joy, center stage, a voice. I can't rock the boat, and I can't take any of the spotlight. So then when Valley Girl comes along, I literally was just trying to have some time with my father. And I cracked the code as a 13-year-old and figured out he loves working. Maybe if we work together, I can spend time with him. So I slid a note under the door saying, please contact my manager, Gail, upstairs. And he took me up on the offer and woke me up on a school night one night. And we just had a fun night in the studio. And that's all it was for me. And it was such a shock that it went on the album. And then an even greater shock that people responded to the song. And I think a shock to my father, who had more than maybe, I think at least 30 albums at that time already out in the world and 20 plus years of experience. And that's the breakout song. I think he had a mixture of, I'd love to take this money and tour with it and make other things I love. But really everyone?
But it was kind of depressing for him in a weird way.
Yeah, I think it was. And I of course picked up on that. And then to be told internally in the home that I was now required to go and be a mouthpiece for this piece of work that was, I'm trying to do my geometry homework and I have terrible skin. I don't want to be in the spotlight. And I was just trying to have fun with my father, but it's for some reason, it caught fire. That was actually some of the when I turned the first draft of the book in, I didn't even have any of the Valley Girl stuff in it. It didn't, I truly, it was a blind spot for me. I couldn't even get to that material. I couldn't even write about it. It was such a tricky time.
Was that in part because, well, you were a young teenager thrown into this very public arena, but also the thing that really shocked me the most about it was that he hadn't credited you.
Well, that's the thing is Gail told me Frank didn't want to give me credit. And she, looking back, was an unreliable narrator. So I don't know if that was how she still was trying to control me or if it was true. But to plant a seed either way, why would you ever tell your kid that? Why would you say your dad doesn't, it's basically in parentheses, your dad doesn't love you enough to think you're valuable or your contribution has any merit, but go on out there and tell the world you had a great time doing it.
So it's like the message that you're getting is the people who are meant to love you most don't think you have any value.
Exactly.
But go and tell the world how much value you have.
Correct. Good luck, everybody.
Where do you even go with that? I mean, where would you go with that as an adult, let alone as a 14-year-old?
Yes, I was extremely depressed as a kid. I spent a lot of time in my room, a lot of time listening to, I mean, thank God for the 80s and their music, because it was the thing that saved me. Bouncing on my mini trampoline, splatter painting my bedroom walls, and just jumping to whatever, ABC, Haircut 100, Duran Duran, The Pretenders, Billy Idol, whatever.
Yeah, Soft Cell.
Yeah, exactly. Adam and the Ants, all of it. It was the best. The Police, Mad World. I'm just going to keep going on and on.
Yeah, go on. Just keep going. I think there's Tears for Fears.
XTC. It was just Squeeze, The Jam. I could go on and on. It was to me still. I still listen to music and just instantly smile. I get so happy.
You've become that mum that listens to music from 4 decades ago. And
I sometimes will even go back farther. I can also enjoy music from the 40s. The 50s are tough. The doo-wop is tough, but
yeah, definitely.
I go back even further, classical.
And did that come from your dad?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, well, there were many things, but one of the things I really loved was whenever he would return from his long 9-month or 7-month stretches of being away, he would bring back music. At the time, they called it world music.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But there's still a world music section.
Yeah. So he just called it music, and he would bring it home, and I'd hear the sounds of Egypt or the sounds of Africa or the sounds of just places that just sounded so magical, mysterious, and just to hear the rhythms and the instrumentations and just exposure to diversity and to. I mean, it was diverse because it wasn't on the radio in the States. It's not diverse to the people who are making it, but it's ragas, for example. it was so exotic and so exciting. And so those were I think music, it makes you smarter. It just does.
And even before Valley Girl, really, music was your way of communicating with your dad, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a lot of conversations about music. I had to work a record player, and he taught me about not just what artists to listen to, Satie, for example, Bach, for example, but the recordings and who the Glenn Gould recordings on the I think it's the Phillips recording of the Glenn Gould doing the playing Bach. I just paid such close attention to my father and how he moved through the world, what he said, what he thought about, and being so literal, I took it in literally.
I mean, in the book, there is not a question. I'm conscious that it's easy to make it sound like Gail monster, Frank not monster, and that's not how you present them at all in the book. I keep coming back to the sense that, what we keep talking about, the Pharaoh syndrome or whatever the word is, and the fact that Frank was doing what he wanted, which included sleeping with other women in your house.
Yeah, literally in the basement.
Literally. And Gail was being pretty horrendous, but as you put it, again, barefoot, pregnant, keeping things going, bringing up the children, and doing whatever it took, really, to keep him. That's my takeout from reading the book. What do you think what message did that give you about heterosexual relationships, Moon?
I mean, this is Gail's public face was that she was zen about what Frank did. It was a family business after all. And when you love somebody, you put up with everything that they are. You accept every piece of them, which is a nice PR move. But behind closed doors, that's not what I observed. And she was gutted by not being chosen. And so to watch your father not choose your mother and identify with your mother, I felt not chosen also. And then, of course, I'm comparing myself to a woman my father's sleeping with. Of course I am. And thinking, well, why does that hole mean more than my feelings about my first crushes and where my life is going? Why is that more interesting? And so it just set up such a crazy jealousy, and a crazy disrespect for the person doing the disregarding. And then also I loved everyone. So then it's just so much to hold as a paradox. And so my brain had to get so large, and my heart had to get so large, my capacity to think, okay, I mean, there's the writing training. Well, if I have to stand in the body of the villain or the hero, and who is the hero and who is the villain, and why are they doing what they're doing? And do they not notice it's having an impact on other people? And what's it like to be somebody who doesn't think about other people? And on and on. I was just like body hopping to understand each aspect. And then it was mysterious to me why, in fact, Frank did return, and how Gail and Frank did stay together. What was the glue? Was it the greatest blowjob in the world? I have no idea. But if it was a technique, I wish I would have learned it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the message that she gave you, that basically if you love somebody, you put up with that stuff. Kind of not ideal.
No, and I wished that they would divorce. There were so many times I just thought, oh, please leave him. But she just I thought it was devotion when I was growing up. I marveled at it, and I thought, wow, she really is crazy about this man. And so there's the mapping for being a doormat and accepting crumbs. And so, of course, I dated both versions of my parents over the years.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I tried all the versions out. Am I my dad? Am I Gail? Do I like this? How do I feel about this? I mean, I didn't like it being exposed to it, and I certainly didn't enjoy it being opposite it either.
Have you spent a lot of your adult life in kind of pursuit of a kind of normality, if you like? Normal is a horrible word, but a kind of ordinariness that you didn't have growing up?
Well, I definitely always felt I was behind the eight ball in terms of having an extra perception aimed at me and an extra expectation aimed at me. even recently, for example, I became trained to teach yoga, and I started teaching. COVID hit, so I started actually teaching online, and I didn't enjoy it because I just felt like some of the people were just logging on to see Zappa's adult kid, and I couldn't stand that feeling, because most people, when they start teaching, that's just the teacher, and if they're not doing a great job, you pick another teacher. But I still haven't had that. I still am fragile around the criticism plus the extra added the shadow piece, and it's frustrating.
It's kind of going both ways, isn't it? Though it was coming at you from inside and from outside.
Definitely, yeah. And that's the thing, is when you have tricky parents and you internalize their whatever, you internalize what you saw and experienced, and you turn that against yourself to make sense of it. Because when you're traumatized, you think, well, let me take all the responsibility, because then I know I will change. I will be responsible and make the changes necessary so that I can fix this situation. So for example, I'd go to therapy saying, okay, here's the situation. And the therapist would say, run for your life, start a new life, don't know these people. And I would say, oh no, I must be telling it wrong. I must have made myself sound wonderful. Let me retell it and tell you all the things I did. And she'd say, I don't need to hear a thing from what you're describing. I can tell what the dynamic is. Run for your life. And so I just kept looking for, how could I have harmony with these people that are incapable of it? And not my father, but Gail. Gail she just was incapable of apologizing. So becoming a parent was really the first time that I had the opportunity to do some of that healing, because giving love to somebody so tiny and seeing how easy it was to say, this isn't about you, or I'm sorry, or what do you need, or you seem to like this, or let's have dinner at the table, or on, basic things. But even the so-called normal people I meet, I don't think that they have that commitment to the rigorous honesty that I have, or that interest in what makes people tick, or, hey, how's it going rowing your canoe? I mean, we're all just given this thing we didn't ask for. No one picks their height, their eye color, their reactions to, their physiological reactions to stimulus.
Yes, I was going to ask you about motherhood, because one of the things that I find quite interesting is quite often when I'm talking to guests, and they will either say that becoming a mother made them empathize with their own mother more, or they will say, no, it made me absolutely furious because, as you've just said, it made me see how easy it was to love this little thing and put it first. And it made me more angry that she hadn't. Which side of that do you fall on?
Well, I'm both, because I ended up as a parent, I so wanted to do everything right and differently than how I was raised. And so I was reading all the books I could get my hands on. And one was a book by Marshall Rosenberg about nonviolent communication. And there was another amazing book by Dan Siegel. I can't remember the name of it, but basically explaining just brain development and what somebody can even take in at different ages and stages. And so, and the basic idea always is that a child they become what they experience. And so that just told me that Gail obviously didn't experience empathy growing up in her life, and or wasn't great, or a combo, or her in some ways. So then I was again doing kind of like the way a detective works a cold case or a difficult Sudoku puzzle. I was just trying to make sense of each of these aspects and trying always to give her the benefit of the doubt and imagine what would make. They say hurt people, but it's not really true. Unwell hurt people. If you're somebody who gets hurt, you actually want no one else to feel as terribly as you felt. And so there's that weird, well, then what makes some hurt people and some want to help others and not have them go through that? Is that, do you come in like that? Is that part of the, I don't know, nurture nature? I don't know. But I feel like my book is, I've filleted myself and I've said, this is a portrait of nurture nature. And also it's a portrait of toxic femininity. You just bend and do and give until you're dust. And then what? When you realize, hey, this isn't working for me. Can I have a life too?
When did you realize, do you think?
Honestly, when Gail passed, I think if things had gone the way the conditioning was so strong. It truly was in some ways. I mean, I watch a lot of documentaries on cults, a lot, because I just think, yes, that's how it happens. Where you're susceptible and somebody can fill in something, a crumb there, you're susceptible in all those areas. Yeah, it's that's the conversation I'm in, and that's my offering is and also I love how Mirabai Starr puts it. We're now in a time of grief literacy, learning the language of, oh, this doesn't sit right with me. But again, had it gone the way I thought it was going to go, I thought I would have just inherited the family business and I would have kept my father's legacy alive until my last breath. And because of what she did, and I'm not going to give her credit for this, because of what she did, I dug deep, and I knew I could have been a cautionary tale about destruction and the conditioning going too far. Or I could say, no, love still gets to win.
Not to give her any credit at all, because it appears to have been done with such malice. But do you actually think she gave you a freedom that you wouldn't have had?
She would think so. She would like to think so, because she loved to take credit for everything. I can't. What I can say is I inherited her tenacity, and so the crucible that was there, the tools I got to untangle it for myself certainly were things I got from her. So she's a part of she generated the problem, but also the clues were hidden in the game to get out with those tools. So.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
There's a moment, just to go back to just before she died, where I kind of would have, because the bulk of the book is probably pre-20, isn't it? And then there's maybe a third of the book, which is about afterwards. And when your father has died and Gail becomes ill and you go and help your sister Diva care for her, which I thought was, I mean, that's a respect. That's a tough ask. But there's a moment where she says to you, after you've basically changed her nappy, which I know a lot of people listening will have been in a similar situation. If only you were always this nice, or something. That's not an exact quote, I don't think, something like that. So painful.
So painful. So painful. Yeah, she was high on, I don't even know what. And for me, I felt like it was the first time she ever saw me for a moment. And she said, oh, what if you were always this nice? And I said I was. And I think she would have, I'm surprised she didn't die on the spot from just taking it in. She lived another week or two, but it was I think a stunning moment. And then just her body couldn't let her take that information in. And she just immediately fell asleep. She couldn't take it in, but it was a victory for me and a gift. And so then when the reversal happened, I think what was most devastating for me looking back now is that she robbed me of the chance to grieve her. She robbed me of the chance to, when resentment stacks up like that, you don't give somebody a chance to make things right. When somebody just decides who you are and then decides to then act on vindictively on the assumptions they've made, they've cast you and they've written a play without you, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you were raised with support and love, then of course it's devastating when someone dies too. But then you can still source power from the love existed. But when that's taken away, you've got to find another power source.
But it seems like so much of it was about power and about you not having any.
That's true. That's true. I never understood power. When I was in acting class, I talk about it in the book. My acting teacher kept assigning me power scenes, and I could not understand. I thought, well, why would you feel happy if you make someone do something? Then they're not doing it. Then they're not doing it because they want to do it. It's a completely illogical and bizarre. It's a fetish as far as I'm concerned. It's an aberration of true power to me is the joy of somebody else having a turn as the leader. And you want everyone to feel empowered. I mean, what would it be like if everyone felt empowered? If everyone felt, we'll never know. But it's nice to aim for.
Can you remember the first time somebody asked you what you wanted?
I'm just learning how to ask myself that question, to be perfectly honest. And that is the patriarchy destroying women. That is the toxic femininity. That being unable to ask yourself what you want and then pursuing it is the poison.
Have you managed to stop, doing what you were trained to do, and what I think actually a lot of girls are trained to do, but maybe not in such an extreme way, which is to work out what you think the other person wants you to want, and then to answer the question the way you think they want it answering rather than the way you want to answer it?
I mean, I certainly did a fair amount of mind reading, of course, unverified. It's more that there doesn't, even if you ask yourself what you want, there isn't the space yet in the culture that says, "Oh, let me help you with that." I'm wired to think, I'm going to help you make your dreams come true, and now we'll work on my dreams. To me, there's a reciprocity that's just a fundamental built-in idea to me that I now have to question. Maybe I wouldn't have survived. I would have in other settings, like when you hear about the people that will do anything to survive. I don't know. I'm just not built to just make sure it's me first. And I'm not the cannibal. And in fact, I say, get out of the cannibal pot. But I do have fantasies about what would it be like to just be selfish, which is what it's called if women do it. Selfish for a year. I love, I can't remember her first name, her last name is Lumen, and she talks about how the men, she's a book about the 7 deadly sins and how women are poisoned by this, how men are allowed to act on the 7 deadly sins and women are not. And how it's just again, it's something that we have to undo. I don't know, just something simple as you're sitting next to somebody on an airplane and there's an empty seat between you, and the guy will just put the middle seat table down, take over that space without saying, "Hey, you want to share half of this goddamn table?" It's appalling. And then you're put in this position to be like, "Hey, can we share it too?" And then you talk yourself out. It's the idea that you can that anything is your oyster. It's for all of us. It's just women just don't have that thing wired in there. It seems. I certainly don't have it. I'm trying to build it.
It's like, you don't assume that empty space or armrest or whatever is yours, but also you're not educated that it's yours to take.
Absolutely.
First and foremost.
Or encouraged to take it. And if you do use it, you better have a good reason to use it.
Yeah.
Men don't need a good reason. We do. And we'll talk. I will talk myself into, better be a good reason and to justify. My cup will still fit on my table, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. Along with my iPad and my phone. And
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like when you're sitting on a train and there's an empty seat next to you and you put your bag on it, and then there's some officious announcement over the tannoy, and you can literally watch all the women take their bags off the seat and the men
Exactly.
don't.
This is exactly what I'm talking about.
It's just
on the most basic level.
Has your attitude to all this stuff changed as you've got older into middle age?
Well, I'm just coming into this awareness of what do I want, And what am I going to do about it? In Eva Eger's book, her amazing book, I can't remember the title right now. Oh, it's The Choice. At the end of the story, she talks about what do you want? Who wants it? Meaning, is this an idea that you've adopted from somebody else? What are you going to do about it? And when? And this is, I think, key. This is key. Don't ask yourself why you want it. Just what do you want, and what are you going to do about it, and when?
Yeah, don't justify wanting it.
Pretend it's science if you can't get the courage up for yourself. If you get it for your kid, get it up for yourself. You can't get it for your kid or yourself. Oh, you're in trouble. You got to try a little harder.
How are you feeling about aging? Because you had a terrible time, didn't you, with your looks as a teenager, and you're feeling like you didn't fit in and you weren't right. And there's actually that really sad moment when you talk about the Bruce Weber picture. And I popped online to look at the Bruce Weber picture, of course. And I was just like, what is she talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's the irony. I mean, I have a lot of regret that I missed out on time I wasted thinking that I wasn't, I mean, there was a lot of reinforcement too. I wasn't getting asked out on dates. And a lot of that was because I think people were intimidated by my father. A lot of that because I was kind of mouthy. I would ask a lot of questions. And again, maybe from that neurodivergent place, I would ask just blunt questions. I remember one story that didn't get in the book was I asked a very well-known British 80s rock guitar god, I won't say his name. I asked him, I said, would you teach me how to give a blowjob? And he thought, he looked at me like I was insane. And I think I was 18 at the time. And I said, would you show me how to do it? And he was horrified, but he was up for it. And it really didn't go great. But and I thanked him afterwards, and we didn't see each other again. But to me, I just thought, I mean, the hilarious thing was that's who I had access to with my last name, a rock god teaching me, and also I didn't know how to be in that world at all, because teenage boys in my class certainly weren't asking me out. They were asking the girls whose legs didn't touch the top, the blondes. I mean, I'm one of those weirdos that thinks hot flashes are hilarious. I'm just like, I'm not doing this. My body's on fire. I am a human volcano. I just find it weird and fascinating. And when I was a mother and milk was coming out of my boobs, I just thought, I'm a food source. It was just, and now I'm trying to apply the same thing to like, my hip is really aching. But I love Justine Bateman's work on aging and on fame. She writes a lot about it, and she's just one of these heroes of mine where she's had no work done, and she's beautiful. And it's wonderful to have a sister in the trenches who's also curious about what do I look like if I do nothing? If I just stay the flower that I am.
Was her book called Face?
Yeah, she has one called Face and one called Fame, and they're wonderful.
So have you done anything?
Oh no, I had oily skin. This is the benefit of teenage cystic acne.
I'm glad to hear there is one.
I know. Finally, an upside. My 8 strands of hair, I loop into braids.
Yeah. No, it's all looking very, very smooth. And it's really terrible because I move the screen so that I can't see myself, because if I can see myself, I'll just sit and pick holes in myself.
Isn't that the worst? Can you believe how old are we and still doing that? Why? It's awful. It is awful. Justine actually, again, she made a film about the inner voice. It's a film called Violet. She's a friend of mine, so I love talking about what she puts into the world, because I feel like she's really a pioneer, not just talking about AI, but all these subjects. She really is a pioneer. Just I think teaching, if you're interested, teaching how to be a human for the whole ride. And I always think about the Ram Dass. I think it's Ram Dass who says we're all just walking each other home, but we're also all just growing each other up. And the way we grow each other up is saying, how are you doing? I love better and best and better systems. I love saying, how are they doing it in a way that's more joyful, more pleasing, more kind to oneself.
I love that. We're all just growing each other up.
And that we're also, we're here to safeguard our vitality. That's it. We're just here to really make sure that that we preserve and use wisely what is inside of us. It's a waste of time to attack ourselves. It's a waste of time. There's a far better use for it. Set a timer, an egg timer.
Yeah,
I hate me. Now I'm done. And it's not even your voice. It's not even your voice.
Whose voice is it?
That's for you to. It's for you to say whose voice is it. Whose voice is it in your head? Who's criticizing you?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Is it all the kids at school who thought you were weird? Is it patriarchy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot of women dating somebody 4 times their age, younger. That's not appealing to me. But it is appealing.
A lot of men.
Like anytime I see a man dating somebody that could be his granddaughter, I think, thank you for showing me how stunted you are and how boring you'd be in bed and how boring you are as a person. You can't obviously have a conversation with somebody your own age. That's your loss. And lame. So I'm always on the lookout. Any adults in the room? Women too. Are there any adults in the room?
And how often are there?
I mean, it's slim pickings, but they do stand out with a halo around them when they're in a room.
Right, I better ask you the questions I always ask at the end. Or you'll never get away from me. I'll just be here all night, or all day for you, all night for me. What's your emotional age?
Ooh. Well, I certainly dress like I'm anywhere between 5 and 17. By society's standards, by my standards, this is how I want to dress. This is me dressing.
Yeah, it's just who you are.
But I know that culturally they'd say, "Why is she still?" I've ditched the barrettes, but so that would be one answer. But don't you have to look at your telomeres to really find out how old you actually are? But there's the science answer.
Yeah, see, I don't know. And it's so interesting. People often say that they're teenagers.
Because it's like such a wonderful time when possibility was allowed. And I think...
Ideally.
Right. But you felt I felt invincible as a teenager. And so to keep cultivating that sense that anything is possible. Now I just do the 50-50 thing. I'm like, well, it could go either way. So I'm just going to assume it's going to go well. But again, I think, how old are we? For me, I look at it in terms of life force. I have more life force than some 3-year-olds, and certainly more than some 79-year-olds.
Yeah, and some 79-year-old men dating 25-year-old women. You've given us loads of book recommendations already, but give us another one.
Well, I loved, I'm Not My Father's Son. Oh gosh. He's a Scottish actor. It was one of the most important books. I can't think of his name. Come on. My Father's Son author. That's hilarious. 1 second. Hold, please. Alan Cumming! Such an important book because this book was, he talks about not being left an inheritance because of who he is as a person. And Scottish law did not allow this parent to be a piece of walking garbage. And
no, it doesn't. You have to leave.
Yeah. And so this was
a third.
I think it's 2/3.
I'm not
sure. It's 2/3, but it's a stunning story about owning your personhood and having the last word. And it was one of those books where I was like, wow, that's a crazy story. And then I read another one called, I'm going to still look it up. Oh, The Joy of It All. But that one was another story about getting slighted as a family member. And I remember getting these books in my hands and thinking, these are amazing books, but not knowing that my, whatever internal guiding system I have was like, check this out. You're going to need to know this information later. This is going to become something that you'll be able to, draw from.
It just came your way. What advice would you give younger women?
Ooh, get on the self-love train as fast as you can. Just annihilate all the negative voices in your head. Really dig deep and hog the middle seat too. Just surround yourself with people that their faces light up when you walk into a room. Stay close to those people who really see you and who really love you.
Who's an older woman who inspires you?
Well, I love Brene Brown's work. I have amazing women in my life in Los Angeles. They're in their 80s. The choreographer, Martha Clark, she's an amazing human. A woman named Shishi Barthélemy, a woman named Emily Haas. Those are my local humans in the world. Yeah, I think, you know, whose work I really am inspired by right now is Alma Harel. She's a filmmaker, and she is really making deeply feminine, deeply beautiful, deeply powerful films and storytelling, short form and long form storytelling. And she blows my mind as a creator. She's amazing. Yeah, I think those are the names that are just that I can see. I'll send you an email list of the rest.
No, that's loads. That's good. What's your superpower?
Caesar salad. I make a really good Caesar salad, and I make amazing soup. Yeah, I like to make things for people, tune into them, and be like, oh, this is what they need to eat. Like, I love to go to the farmer's market, and just the fruits and vegetables tell me what I'm going to make you.
And last one, how many fucks do you give?
Still giving too many. I'm reducing it every day. Those are funny.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy The Shift and would like to show your appreciation, why not buy me a coffee? Go to www.buymeacoffee.com/The Shift with Sam Baker. You can hear a new episode of The Shift every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please do rate, review, follow, tell your friends, because it really does help other people find us. And if you'd like to know more about my own experience of shifting, my book, The Shift, How I Lost and Found Myself After 40, and you can too, is out now in paperback.